we have to prepare for all possibilities of EU exit. It has enabled projects that in previous eras took up to 3 years to deliver. We've been able to deliver equivalent projects in timescales of around 6 months. People joining the FCA see they're doing good for society as a whole. We are also able to recruit on the basis of a progressive agenda. It's exciting work in a valuable context. I'd always want to be participative as a leader, creating the environment where the whole is more than the sum of the parts. Seek out challenges, plan for success. If you say, look, this is an achievable goal, you're going to work back from that goal and build a plan that's going to get us there. More than half the time you can pull that off. Many of those who failed in life gave up, not realizing how close they were to success.
This is CIO TV. My name is Hendrik Deckers. I'm here today with Martin Bellamy at the FCA in London. Martin is a computer scientist, graduated from the Imperial College. He has more than 35 years of experience. He started in marketing and then went into technology, and he's worked in very different industries: financial services, higher education, media, welfare, healthcare, justice, and now for 2 years as the CIO of the Financial Conduct Authority. And Martin also has a PhD in cloud computing, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a moment. Martin, first, in a nutshell, could you explain what is the FCA?
Sure. The FCA is the UK financial regulator. Mm-hmm. Our role is to oversee the entire financial services industry. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, our objectives are to protect consumers, mm-hmm. to promote effective competition, and ensure the integrity of the markets. In summary, our role is to ensure financial markets work well.
Okay, that's very clear. Now, Martin, let's talk about first about the cloud migration program mm-hmm. that you have implemented here at the FCA, which is quite a big program, quite a strategic program. What was the issues that you wanted to solve, and how did you approach this cloud platform that you built, in fact?
Right. Well, the origin of the program goes back to 2013, mm-hmm. when the FCA was set a particularly large challenge, and that was, our remit was expanded to include firms providing consumer credit, mm-hmm. As well as credit card companies and personal loan providers. That included any individual or any organisation who loans money to other individuals.
Yep.
That was a huge expansion of the number of organisations the FCA needed to regulate, mm-hmm. And the timescales were quite tight. When the team looked at how could they meet that requirement using the legacy IT architecture we had, they concluded it couldn't be done.
Okay.
So a new approach was needed, and they turned to the cloud and said, look, does that give us a way forward? Mm-hmm. It was quite challenging, not least because the FCA has very high security requirements.
Of course.
And in the early days, public cloud, there were questions over, is it as secure as mm-hmm. traditional enterprise IT?
Yep.
But it was the only way, and so the team worked out a way to resolve the problems. Mm-hmm. The upshot of that is it was a big success and was delivered to meet the timescales, and that first that was really the awakening point,
yep.
where people said, look, this is actually quite phenomenal what's been achieved here.
Yep.
Could we do more with this?
Okay.
Yeah. Now, in terms of developments beyond that,
mm-hmm.
there were then other business needs the FCA had, mm-hmm. Over probably the following year, 2014, 2015, mm-hmm. it became recognised that new projects in general could be done more quickly, yep. and more cost effectively in the cloud than in the conventional data centre, and so use of the cloud grew. Mm-hmm. But then there were two further inflection points. The first was a realisation that the use of the cloud, if it was done in different ways for different business needs, mm-hmm. using the cloud quite quickly became really complex to manage because you had many different ways of doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so we realised that in order to move forwards, we would need to build an industrialised virtual data centre mm-hmm. in the cloud.
Okay.
The second realisation was that when we were looking at our future IT strategy, And a particular question here for us was around our legacy data center, which was nearing the end of life.
Yep.
We asked the question, what if we replace that entire legacy data center by moving to the cloud? What if our strategy was to adopt software as a service wherever there's a suitable product, but to use our virtual private cloud data center built in AWS, I should say, where SaaS is not suitable? And what if we, at the same time, could build a digital platform that would be the foundation for the next phase of data-enabled regulation?
So the strategy is to go 100% cloud.
That is correct.
With as much as possible a SaaS platform, software as a service, and where that is not possible, to develop yourself in the cloud.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so you want to go 100%. What's the target? When do you want to reach this?
Well, we want to exit our legacy data center by 2022, which gives us, we know when we talk to peer organizations, that's a relatively aggressive timescale.
Yep.
Something we've achieved at the end of last month was we got to the point where we have now initiated all of the projects we need to achieve that data center exit and to complete the cloud migration.
Yeah. So how far are you down the road? What percentage is still old legacy systems, and what is new systems or software as a service systems today?
Today we're more than halfway there, approaching 60%, but still with a fair way to go. The other 40% is largely legacy.
Okay. And the legacy is going to move to the cloud, or you're going to rebuild all the legacy
Well,
systems?
again, a really interesting question, because you'll appreciate that to achieve a data center exit 2022 for the scale of operation we have is quite a challenging date. And one of our priorities was to minimize the risk of not achieving that date. And so back about 18 months ago, we asked the question, would it make more sense to do a simple lift and shift type move into the cloud, or more realistically lift and shift with minimal business change? Or would it make sense to, at the same time as we do that, do so in a more strategic way that creates our digital platform for regulation? When we looked at the cost, time and risk analysis, we concluded that it was actually marginal which of those we did. And the reason for that was some of the legacy was so far from what was needed to run in the cloud, it had to be largely rebuilt anyway. So, of course, we then reached the conclusion, well, if we're going to have to do the rebuild, let's rebuild it in a strategic way so it's fit for the future.
Wow, so that's quite a strategy. I mean, a complete rebuild of all the legacy systems, everything in the cloud, and with that have a digital platform for the organization.
Indeed, yes, yeah. And that digital platform is designed to deliver, as well as individual outcomes from each component, the platform is also designed to deliver a set of cross-cutting outcomes that are, if you like, bigger than the sum of the parts.
Okay.
So there are 5 of those that we bear in mind, and we look at these when we're designing each component. The first of these is around user experience, and that's not only user experience for our colleagues in the FCA, but it's also user experience for the financial services industry, because there are our clients, there are 60,000 firms, more than 100,000 individuals using our service. And it's also user experience for consumers, because we offer services that are available to everybody in the UK. For example, a service called the Register that allows people to verify whether a financial firm is properly authorised by the FCA. Our second cross-cutting principle is data. And on data, our aspiration is for data to be available for all legitimate purposes. The third cross-cutting objective is to create insight. And by insight, we mean enabling regulators in the FCA to have the best possible decision support, because it's a big task regulating a large industry, and the ratio of people in the industry, there's about 1.2 million people working in the financial service industry in the UK. In the FCA, there's 3,500. The fourth cross-cutting goal is then automation, and of course underpinning automation is integration. So we already have a number of fully automated straight-through process examples. We see more of that happening in the future. And the final cross-cutting ambition is operational excellence, where we are looking to be able to demonstrate value for money, high efficiency, best-in-class performance of our internal services to allow us to operate at maximum efficiency.
What is the approach when you build like a new platform? How is it built? Who is involved? That's a big project. How do you do that?
Yes, yeah. Well, at the platform level, first of all, we created a blueprint for the capabilities we wanted to have on the future platform. And we did that very conscious that in the previous generation of IT, organizations generally tended to respond to requests from particular departments. For example, the sales departments in a consumer products company might request a risk management system. A risk management system would be built specifically for them. And then, a year later, there might be a request from the manufacturing department for a risk management system, and another one would be provided. And that effect led to a proliferation of services. So our second strategic decision was to say that as in building what I referred to earlier as the 5 digital enablers, we need to do so with a digital platform that has a set of general purpose capabilities that while each of them will inevitably be deployed in one area of the organization first, each of them when it's commissioned is built with the end in mind. It's built to become a truly general purpose capability that will meet the needs of all the different parts of the organization and all the use cases we will have for that. That is something, it's an approach that we anticipate will lead to substantial simplification of our digital architecture. We expect to move from hundreds of services to reduce that by an order of magnitude to tens of services. And of course that then brings many related benefits. Now if we move one level down again and then ask the question, how do we implement each component, each of those general purpose capabilities, as the trigger for initiating each piece of work arrives, our first question is there a suitable software as a service product that meets that need? And where there is, we will always choose software as a service first because of the breadth of capabilities it brings and the ability to get a whole technology stack that remains evergreen as it's upgraded by the cloud provider. Where things are unique to regulation, we will then build those.
And there's many, I can imagine.
And there are many because, of course, every organisation has a unique purpose. And what you might call the line of business systems that are unique to FCA, it's those we build in the virtual private cloud data center.
And what are like the standard software as a service components that you can reuse? Is it CRM systems or, there's no ERP for an FCA it's just off the shelf.
There isn't full ERP, but there's certainly finance and HR that we can source from the cloud. There is CRM, there's office software. And then at the layer below, there are a whole host of services that we've used in our cloud data center, as we call it, which I say is entirely Amazon Web Services used in the standard way, but in a consistent way that gives us confidence in security, operability, reliability, and all of the other non-functional requirements you got from a conventional data center.
You said that you're building a virtual private cloud in Amazon Web Services.
Yes, yeah.
What is that exactly and why and how did you do that?
Yes, well effectively, as I mentioned earlier, in our early use of Amazon Web Services, we quite quickly found that projects were doing similar things in different ways. And so we were getting a proliferation of approaches. So we looked at all of the different controls and capabilities that you need to run a set of services in the cloud successfully. and identified that there were three main categories. First of all, encapsulation of standard cloud services in a way that gives us confidence we are going to use them consistently in a secure way. Secondly, a set of management tools, many of which are themselves sourced as software as a service, and the management tools are for operability, monitoring, security, virus scanning, all of those sorts of things. And then the third dimension was a set of procedures that gives us confidence that when what is quite a large number of different people in our organisation interface in delivering change via the cloud data centre, that the procedures are going to ensure reliability, coherence, and the ability to maintain that facility efficiently moving forwards. When we had completed the analysis of the scale of work that would need to be done, we identified in the order of 60 different work packages, some of which were significant in terms of the amount of design and implementation resource they needed.
And so the design and the development of these packages, how do you approach that? Is that in-house development? Do you work with partners? And how do you select your partners for a big project like this?
Right. So our implementation is done with partners, but we have a policy of owning the design ourselves.
Okay.
And bringing in partners to help us with implementation. So in the case of the cloud data center, it came at a busy time for us because we were preparing for EU withdrawal and delivering some major planks of our data strategy. So in that case, we did conclude that we should go to the market with a slightly bigger brief than we normally would.
Okay.
And we pulled in some firms to help us both with the detailed design and implementation, the high-level design we did, and the review and sign-off of the design we did. Now, I realise I'm talking about this, I'm talking very much in traditional big project waterfall terms about the build of this. We do see the platform, once built, is a foundation for moving fully into the Agile DevOps way of working. And to a large extent, we are in that mode of operation already. But as you're building a digital platform where you're putting in place the components for the first time, there is still the need to go through, identify what you need, design, build, do the first deployment. But it's then iterative upgrades beyond that first deployment.
So recreating all legacy systems, moving 100% to the cloud, I mean, that's quite unique. I can imagine, especially in a government environment, let's say. Do you see that in UK and other government organizations that they have the similar goals and strategies like yours?
We see a general trend towards this, and indeed the UK government announced in 2011, and I was part of that announcement, announced a cloud-first strategy, and that's recently been augmented by an announcement of a public cloud-first strategy. So both of those are on public record as announcements on public sector IT policy.
In the introduction, we said that you have a PhD in cloud computing.
Yes.
How did you get that?
That's a really interesting question, and it goes back to 2010 when I was seconded into the Cabinet Office to be the inaugural director of the UK government cloud computing programme, which was referred to as G-Cloud. And the brief I had was to effectively look at all dimensions of strategy, know how you'd build, how you'd operate, the commercial aspects, security, know the engagement models, know how you would actually mobilise. But the budget, and I thought that was a huge task. I thought, wow, it's going to be fantastically interesting to work on that. But initially, at that point in time, money was becoming tighter, and the budget I had was extremely small. And so my reaction was to say, well, look, how can I deliver such a big ambition with a team that is one or two people?
Yeah.
And I concluded I couldn't.
Yeah.
So in thinking about alternative approaches, I then, and I did this after talking to others about what different ideas would work, but the idea we landed on was, let's do a call for volunteers and invite both the IT industry and government departments to identify individuals they'd be prepared to second to the programme. And we said, look, we're looking for serious commitment. We're looking for a commitment of at least 4 months and at least 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And this will be an unpaid commitment. It's a chance to contribute to shaping the direction of public sector IT policy.
Yeah.
And we were delighted with the response we got. That approach, after quite a number of presentations explaining the ambition and explaining how we were going to structure the programme, the approach yielded 150 volunteers, all of who were screened to make sure that it would be a good use of mutual time. That resulted in us in building a team of 120 people in 8 different strands of work. Now, about the time I was setting that project up, I went back to see one of the academics who had taught me computer science when I'd been at Imperial College back in the 80s. And he very quickly said, look, this is fascinating what you're doing, and we'd love to be involved. He said, tell you what, why don't you register for a part-time PhD, do the work you're doing, and then do some additional work to do academic validation of legitimate strategies for deploying cloud computing in public sector organisations. It is legitimate for you to use the work you are doing with the volunteers as the foundation. There will be extra work to do, but this is a great opportunity to get a PhD as a byproduct of work you're doing anyway.
Yeah, and so what was the outcome for the G Cloud? Mobilizing 120 people is on a voluntary basis quite amazing in the government and environment. So what did you do with them, and what was the end result of that program?
The end result was a strategy and a business case. Many of those documents were published on the Cabinet Office website, and some of them are in the National Archive that set out, really address the questions: is cloud computing a safe and appropriate step for government to take? At the time the work was initiated, there were questions about, is it sustainable? Is it secure? Can it work at scale? Can you deliver services reliably across multiple cloud vendors? And the approach we took was to identify the major themes that needed to be addressed to build confidence. And the main ones there were how you would design and implement services, how you would do the DevOps, the sustaining of services, how you would do the securing of services, how you would build the business case, how you would effectively manage the deployment into the public sector. And we had there the concept of an application store for government, or a cloud services store for government. And all of that was delivered through 8 work strands, each of which specialised in looking in depth at an individual area of work, and each of which had a team averaging 15 people. And then there were regular meetings of a overarching core team that had the job of joining all of that up and commissioning and developing the outputs of the project.
So you're really, you're a doctor in cloud computing, you're really a specialist in the strategy for cloud and government cloud specifically, how to implement, how to use. Is that why you joined the FCA then as well?
It was one of the reasons. So my early career was in financial services technology, and I'd experienced several different parts of the financial services industry then, and recalled the financial service industry as being dynamic, highly innovative, always looking to push the boundaries of financial service innovation using technology. So I knew, so in other words, I knew it was an exciting industry to work in.
Yeah.
Immediately before I came to the FCA, I had done work. I'd been CIO of Cambridge University, and my work there had been around. It was a variety of areas, as all CIO roles are, but one of those areas was expansion of research computing to handle data at petabyte scale. And as part of that, we were able to build what was at the time and may still be the UK's largest academic supercomputer.
Okay.
And my thinking was that if the power of that research computing capability could be deployed with the agility of cloud for the benefit of regulation of the financial services industry, then there was potential for some really exciting achievements that push boundaries and make new things possible. And it was that combination I thought this could be a really exciting role to take on. Another factor, of course, is that I've worked in the public sector now for the last more than 15 years. And during that time, I've built a strong ethos of the value of public service work and indeed the need for regulation. So delivering public value was also a very attractive part of the role.
The program that you've been running here for the last 2 years, the recreating and going 100% cloud, I can imagine that also meant that you have to restructure the IT organization that you have here within the FCA. So can you talk about that? How is the IT part of the organization structured today, and what changes that you had to make?
Yes, indeed. And you're absolutely right. We did conclude it was necessary to restructure the IT organisation. The move to cloud was one of the reasons for that, but it wasn't the only major reason. The second factor was that while the structure I inherited was well designed for the purpose it was designed for, and was still performing well in delivering that purpose, it had been designed for the business need of a decade ago, which involved a relatively small number of large projects that were typically delivered over a period of 1 to 3 years. The world today is very different. The pace of innovation has increased across the board, and much of the change has become incremental. So our challenge in a nutshell was, how do we create the organisation we will need for the future that on the one hand enables a faster rate of business innovation, and of course business innovation brings with it the possibility of divergent solutions. If innovation is happening in many different places, if there isn't a framework for it, you will get similar problems being solved in very different ways. So we had to, how do you reconcile that challenge with the need to consolidate on a unified architecture? And so the organisation we've put in place is designed to address both the business driver of accelerating the pace of innovation and the technology driver of the need to ensure a simplification of the architecture to ensure sustainability and value for money.
So I can imagine that needed some new people, some new skills, some new capabilities in the team. So how easy is it for the FCA as a government organization to attract top talent, to keep people here? So how do you do that? How do you build your teams?
Yes. Well, in terms of people, I have worked, as you've set out, in private sector organisations and public sector organisations. I can genuinely say that the team here at the FCA is the best I've had. Beating even the teams in the private sector organisations I've worked in, or at least as good as the private sector organisations I've worked in. And the reason for that is that in addition to having a strong public service ethos, which is a magnet for recruitment, people joining the FCA see they're doing good for society as a whole, and that's a powerful recruitment attribute. We are also able to recruit on the basis of a progressive agenda. No, so in other words, it's exciting work in a valuable context.
In the coming months, we will witness a Brexit one way or another.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's the impact that it has on FCA in general and on IT of FCA today?
Sure. Well, for FCA in general, it means we have to prepare for all possibilities of EU exit,
Yep.
Including exit without a deal. Mm-hmm. And exit without a deal would see financial regulation in the UK become much more separate and distinct from that of Europe.
Yep.
At the moment, regulation across Europe is to a significant extent integrated with data sharing going across EU member state boundaries. Mm-hmm. Under certain scenarios, we assume that to a large extent would cease.
Yep.
And therefore, the challenge in digital terms for us has been to replicate the services that are currently provided at a European level, at the UK level, so that we could preserve functioning of the UK markets and regulation of those markets in an equivalent way, but at the UK level. That has required us undertaking a significant number of projects, all of which had tight timescales because there hasn't been a lot of time to prepare for this. And indeed it is to the credit of the cloud strategy that it has enabled projects that in previous eras took up to 3 years to deliver. Mm-hmm. We've been able to deliver equivalent projects in timescales of around 6 months. And that has been, in other words, we found the cloud has been a radical accelerator of timescales because of its widely reported agility benefits. And that, you don't need to wait for environments. Yep. You can start the design and build on day one.
So Martin, tell me, how is IT really organized here today in FCA?
Okay, so in the structure we've put in place over the last 12 months, and it was a complete restructure. We realized we needed different skill profiles in some cases, as well as a different way of organizing. So we've moved into what we call a business and product focused organization. Okay. At the heart of that are 3 divisional focus teams and 6 product groups. The divisional focus teams are headed up by people I regard as divisional CIOs, leading our interaction, strategy and delivery for the different components of FCA. And they commission innovation through our 6 product groups, which are fully embracing Agile and DevOps. And of the product groups, 3 look after infrastructure and commodity services. So the infrastructure and operations groups cover end user computing, ERP, and infrastructure, including the cloud data center. Yep. And then we have another 3 product groups that are focusing on services unique to regulation and building our digital regulatory platform. And they look after case and risk management, data and analytics, and investigation and intelligence. Now, in order to make sure that construct works well, and because you could put that structure in place and see a lot of divergence in the way product groups responded to different activities. Yep. We then have a number of functions that are designed to achieve what you might call strategic coherence across the organisation. One of those groups is called strategy, architecture and planning. Yep. And that's about the big picture. Where is the money being invested? How does the platform design overall work? What are the policies within which each component and service are designed? Yep. We have common functions for service operations. That runs the service desk on behalf of all the product groups. Yep. We have a common supplier management function as well. And all of those are designed to ensure that what we deliver is coherent when viewed from outside the organisation. Yep. We have 2 further functions that were important to us for achieving sustainability. The first of those is a internal operations function that ensures we have the internal policies, we maintain the organisation, we get recruitment right, we manage budgets effectively, we manage risks effectively, so that on the inside the organisation delivers on the commitment we've made to the broader FCA. And then finally, but particularly significantly in my mind, we have built into this organisational structure the means to keep the organisation and the people within it fresh and current. We've built in 3 communities of practice that have the job of both ensuring we are continuously developing our capability and ways of working, and that we are providing development opportunities and support for career planning for individuals. And that effectively means that the people in the organisation are not part of one of the 15, or are not just members of one of the 15 or so entities that make up the organisation. They're also part of a practice and are given opportunities to see the bigger picture about what people in their disciplines and related disciplines are doing, given development opportunities so they can acquire skills that help people move into their next position.
That's quite a reorganization, I can imagine. So how long does that take? If you say, well, we need to reorganize, and then until you say, well, now we've got everything in place. So what's the typical time that you need to do a reorg like that?
Right. Well, the planning of that restructure from the point I joined in October 2017, it was around 6 months from that point to announcing the structure. That was April 2018. We then had a period of consultation through to the autumn. We then implemented the change in 2 stages, the first being a pilot stage to validate that the new function would work and allow us to sustain at least the same level of performance. And once the pilot had been successful, we moved the rest of the organisation to that structure around October. And we declared that initial phase of the restructure, which we called the transition stage, we declared that complete by the end of February this year. So end to end, from my joining to completing that, that was 15 months or so, exactly. Yes, now, however, we don't regard the restructure as being over at that point. So what we've established is the new functions that we need to deliver for the future, and we've validated that end-to-end performance sustains what was previously achieved. But of course the aspiration wasn't just to have a new structure that does the same thing. The aspiration was to do rather better.
To do better.
So we're now in what we call the transformation stage. And in that stage, every team is being asked to think about, imagine a year from now, your team is a top performer, recognised for being hugely successful. What's it going to be like? What's it going to be different? And to enable that difference, what are you going to be doing differently? And what support are you going to be getting from the rest of the organisation to enable you to play that part? And we then are, having helped each team develop its vision, we then support that process with helping each team develop a plan that incorporates not only that team's own needs, but the needs of other teams on it. And that phase, which is being done, of course, in parallel with a huge amount of delivery that's underway, and is less dramatic because people are still in the same jobs. It's just improving the way those jobs are done and the way teams work and the way teams interact. But we have called that out as a formal phase of the organisational change with its own success measures, and we will declare that done when we see the success measures being achieved.
And how do you measure the success of a reorganisation, restructuring like this?
We measure it in terms of the effectiveness of the business engagement. Because one of our ambitions was to become integral to the business, so that the regulators and the technology organisation are working insofar as possible as one. So we're seeing that engagement scores go up. Are we seeing the flow of ideas? Are we seeing the shift from order taker to true partner? We're measuring it on the velocity of what the product groups are doing. Are we seeing the backlogs be created? Are we seeing the appropriate prioritization?
Yep.
Are we seeing the business value being delivered?
Mm-hmm.
And we're also ensuring that we have measures on financial performance, people performance, diversity and inclusion, effectiveness of risk management, coherence of architecture.